Hi there, I'm Christine, and you're listening to another episode of Innovative Tac-Tips, where I interview industry leaders in various industries, and I like to pick their brain and have them provide insights where listeners can apply them to their own lives or learn things that they never knew before. So I'm with the wonderful Patrick Kelley. He Before I jump down that road, I would love for you to tell everyone what you do. So thank you, Patrick, for coming on. And I am excited to pick your brain. So can you tell the listeners, what do you do?
What do I do? That's depends on the day, I guess. But I'm Patrick Kelley. I currently work as a distinguished architect at Zoom. I've been here for about 4.5 years. And prior to working at Zoom, I actually worked at Microsoft for 12 years. And prior to Microsoft, I worked at Citrix, and I've worked at ESPN and Disney. So I've had a good career, but it's all been in the technology and UCaaS space, or Unified Collaboration as a Service space. So starting from email back in the day to chat to now video conferencing and audio conferencing and phone. So I've touched a lot of parts of communication.
I love a couple of the names that you mentioned. The one at Microsoft sounds like a really great marriage. Whenever I hear people that have been at a place for over 10 years, I'm like, that sounds like a great marriage. Again, I'm seeing this from an outside lens. So you probably learned a whole lot there and obviously ESPN and other places. I guess being on the tech side of things, what makes your heart sing about, I guess, the collective amount of companies or organizations you worked at? What made your heart sing about staying on that side of the organization?
I think I've stayed in communications for so long in the tech field is because it had immediate resonance with me when I was talking to customers. There's one thing to be a coder, right? And you're in a cubicle and you're doing your coding stuff. You don't really get to face customers and see how your code maybe affected their lives. But a lot of times even when I first started out at Microsoft, I was a support escalation engineer on the networking team. And so my job was to just fix stuff that was broken. And the cool thing about being in support is that you get immediate feedback for when you fix a problem. And this problem that has been causing havoc for the customer, you being on the line and fixing it, they're so grateful to you as a person that you've actually fixed this problem and solved an issue with them. And so the major part of my job that I enjoy is not being in technology, it's really being in front of a person, right? And you're helping them as a just a trusted advisor figure out a solution for a problem they're having. And that's what I enjoy most. And it's immediate feedback that I typically get too.
I appreciate I always like to say sometimes when you're, the first line of defense with helping people, it's like you're kind of a superhero in a sense, right? You're able
Yeah.
to make them breathe easier in the day and help them solve, because technology can sometimes be that can be frustrating, right? And so when things don't work when you're expecting them to work, it's like when you're able to help them and add value, I think that that's really rewarding. I have a question about, I guess, collectively, is there something in your life that's been a worthwhile investment, maybe career-wise or outside of I guess your workforce that you've invested in that has been a worthwhile investment? Could be time, could be money, could could be anything that has like helped you become the leader you are today.
I definitely, something that comes to mind immediately is I've invested a ton of time, I guess money too, to a degree, in becoming a really good presenter, a public speaker, and a storyteller. And I think that transcends every single vertical. Because if you were a good storyteller, presenter, public speaker, you can literally be a leader in your field because you can be the smartest person in the world. And if no one knows that, they're not going to think of you that way. And, and being able to tell a story that resonates with a customer is paramount to really selling or getting a point across. And so I've spent a lot of my time and a lot of my years becoming a really good storyteller. And that has helped me really be successful in my career. So if there's one piece of advice I could give anybody, it's that embrace the growth pattern of going through something uncomfortable. And a lot of times public speaking and presenting and storytelling is not the forefront of where people are wanting to go. They're scared of it. It's frightening. One, because they probably aren't good at it because they haven't put the time and effort into being good at it. You're not just going to be a good storyteller at birth, right? You're going to have to practice and practice and practice. And that's something I've spent a ton of my time becoming, that presenter and public speaker and storyteller.
100%. Was it a couple years ago? I did stand up comedy for the first time. It was a roller coaster of emotions. But to your point of storytelling, the best jokes, I believe, come out of stories, right? I think
Yeah.
the the punchline, and I mean, obviously there's different kind of humor, different kind of jokes out there, but how I like created my set was, it was a narrative, right? It was story after story, but it was a smooth transition. And I think you can be brilliant, like you can be technically brilliant and also, I mean, just brilliant in general. But if you can't communicate it in a way that's going to resonate with your audience and have that aha moment, then it's kind of, you're doing yourself a disservice. So to your point, I think that there's a really great investment to just work on being able to communicate in a way where you're communicating competently. So with that, I guess I should ask, is there, throughout working on that, I think a failure is like throwing in the towel. Has there any like failure of yours, maybe with storytelling or just throughout your life, that has later set you up for success, that could complement your storytelling, or your speaking experiences, or it could be something else? Is there anything in your life that had happened that later set you up for success?
Failure, that's always a tough topic to talk about, right? Is admitting public failure to a degree. When I was at Microsoft, as I said, I started out as an escalation engineer on the networking team. And then after about 3 years, I just got tired of being in a cubicle the whole time and being on the phone. So I got a promotion to what they call Microsoft Consulting Services, which is basically meaning I was a deployment architect. I deployed all these technologies that I was supporting, and I was in front of customers, getting better at presenting and certainly storytelling. But I wasn't in sales, all right? I wasn't in front of the customer at the forefront, the pinnacle, the spear of the head type of situation. I was after something was sold, but I really wanted to get in front of customers at that pre-engineering, pre-sales level. And I really wanted this job so bad. It was called a voice technical solution professional. That was like my dream job at Microsoft. I applied for that job, I believe it was 32 different times over the course of 9 years. And I never, ever got an interview because part of being a TSP or technical solutions professional is you had to have experience in sales. And I had none, right? I was an escalation engineer. I was a deployment engineer. So failure after failure after failure, I figured out, I guess I probably better get some sales experience. And I actually left Microsoft and I went to a Microsoft partner, and I became what they call a solutions architect, which is, again, like kind of a pre-sales engineering type. And I spent about a year and a half there honing sales skills that I honestly didn't have at Microsoft. And about a year and a half later, that voice TSP job opened up again. And this time I applied for it with all my technical competence, obviously working for Microsoft, but now I had that sales experience that I was lacking. And I got that job. I interviewed for that job, and I got my dream job. And so that was, those 32 failures didn't dissuade me from trying and trying and trying again. It just made me hungrier for that solution.
That gives me the goosebumps because I had a similar experience with applying for a job for the NFL, a specific club, specific team, and it took more than two times, right, to get the position. More than two. I won't, I won't go down that rabbit. I don't know how many times, but it really hit. It really hit me hard as like, what's wrong with me? Almost like you internalize everything, and again, sometimes we can be our worst critic. And I think it's really important, like you said, to go after what you want, right? Go after what you want. Go after, like, work on what you need to work on and come back. And because I think everyone, if they really want to like achieve something, they really can do it. So that gives me the goosebumps goosebumps because it is like, if you really think that you can accomplish something, like that position that you applied for, I think that's a worthy story to like echo everywhere, right? Like you can do it. Like if you put your mind to it, and again, like sales, I think when you refine your skill set, I think if you're good at sales, I think you can do a lot of things. And so for you to take the time to work on that, I think that's a big thing. Would there be like today, would there be any advice that you would give your younger self today, that you didn't know that would help you, um, I guess progress through things with a different lens?
Uh, yeah.
Hmm.
I think the older I get, and I'm 53 years old, is the less pride and ego I have. And when I first started out in my corporate career or any job, really, even in school, I was very proud. And my ego was way too big for the checks I could cash. And and I was afraid to be seen as less than. I was afraid to ask for help. I was afraid to admit I didn't know something. So a lot of times I would just fake it and fail. But if I could go talk to the 20, 25, 30-year old Patrick, I would say, hey, you know what? Swallow the ego, swallow the pride. It's literally okay to ask for help. It's okay not to be the smartest person in the room because that's going to give you the ability to learn from the smartest person in the room. And a lot of times, unfortunately, early in my career, I was sometimes the smartest guy in the room. I had no one to ask. And and so I remember my first day on the job at Microsoft. It was quickly apparent that I was not the smartest person in the room any longer. But I didn't know how to ask for help. My pride and ego got in the way of my success, and I was failing. And until I literally grasped that, hey, it's okay to not be the smartest guy in the room, to ask for help, to have a team, to be not an individual contributor, but a team contributor, it made me a much better person than I am today, than I was then. And today I'm quite okay asking for help. I'm quite okay seeing somebody else's success greater than mine. And that was a lot of humbling pie to eat along the way.
I agree. Yes, I like to call it ego bruises. I have a ton of those sometimes. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, that hurt a little bit, but I understand that I need to sit down and be humble and understand that I don't know everything. And I think to your point, it's like you don't need to know everything at once, right? I think, but to your point, it is when you get into what is it, a big pond, you're a little fish in a big pond, you tend to want to, um, I don't know if the word is make it, but like create your brand or create, like your impression of, that you're capable of things. And I think a lot of people are still going through that today throughout their whole entire life. And I think it's great that you acknowledge it and like take a step back and self-reflect, because I think that to me is humility and admirable and a sign of maturity, because I think a lot of times in the workforce I believe that a lot of people sometimes don't know what they're doing. They just progress, right? The people that progress, and
It's
it's
true.
like I think business is an art and a science. And so sometimes you have to get creative on going to market with things, because sometimes you have to do that to stand out. And so to your point, it's the more that you can absorb and learn from others, I think the more interesting you are as an individual. So my next question to that is there an unusual habit or something that someone doesn't know, or like maybe a lot of people don't know about you, that you can share that you love?
Interesting question. I've been called a Renaissance man of sorts because I have a lot of different hobbies and interests that go well beyond technology. I grew up on a farm in the corner of the southeast corner of Colorado. I grew up on a farm and a wheat farm at a cattle ranch. So I grew up with no TV even. I didn't have any TV. I literally lived
Wow.
in a trailer in the middle of nowhere where I didn't have a suburb to go talk, hang out with friends. I literally had to entertain myself all the time. But a lot of times too on a farm is that if you want to fix something, you have to do it yourself. There's no one to call, right? There's no anybody to call come to save you in the middle of the prairie when you're stranded. You have to figure it out yourself. You have to use this analytical skills and these problem solving skills that I wasn't even aware I had until later in life. And so now I'm super resourceful when it comes to fixing my house or fixing a motorcycle or fixing a car. I love to do carpentry work. I love to weld. I love to work with my hands, which is something that gets me above and beyond the critical thinking that I have to do at my job. So if people don't know, I am a technical nerd and that's what I do for a living, but that is not really a passion I have outside of work. I don't read technical blogs in my free time. I don't build labs and, network engineers stuff in my free time. I literally work on my motorcycle or I work on my house and growing up on a farm, I didn't have YouTube growing up. I couldn't just look it up and see some sort of TikTok on how to fix it. I had to figure it out myself, which built those problem and analytical skills that I didn't even know I was developing, but have certainly helped me in my course of my career.
I think that that's a big, call it maybe work ethic or just maybe characteristic. I think resourceful is a good thing. Just today in the workforce, the more resourceful you can be, I think the more success you'll have just all across the organization, right? Because, I mean, again, let me take a step back. Having no internet, having no, like being, I don't want to say stranded, but being, or isolated, I feel like those are, but just being
Yeah.
away, right? Away from technical resources, we'll say that, technical resources, it makes you, yeah, it opens up a different side of your brain, right? Left or right, both, I guess, but it actually, scientists, it opens up a pathway, and the more pathways that you can create in your brain to solve issues is great, because there's more than one way to resolve or triage um, escalations. And so I think that's a huge thing today people can use on their day-to-day operations. For me, I'm trying to think. I had internet. I'm trying to think. When did I have internet? I'm trying to think of, like, I grew up in a suburb, so I wasn't isolated, like I wasn't away from, that, but I remember, yeah, I didn't really get to have like a cell phone and any of that until maybe when I was like senior in high school, because I had a bunch of open hours, but I didn't really get, and then the internet boom happened, and I think I was just like, what is this? Like, I don't have to go to the library and look up things. I can actually like Google things. I think that was like a epiphany for me. But yeah, I think the more that you can be self-sufficient, the more successful you'll be and the more resourceful you'll be. So that's really cool to learn about you, because I had no idea. I actually, when I moved from Minnesota to Utah, I was actually looking at moving to Montana. I stayed in the mountains for a week in Paradise Valley, and I thought, well, I'm not a doctor or a lawyer, and there's not a hospital for like maybe an hour away, so let's move to Salt Lake for a bit, and then we'll figure that out later. Because I was like, well, anyways. But to your point of um, working on your motorcycle and just figuring things out, I think that that's a good trait to have just in life, is to always be curious, right? Always to want to figure out things. And um anyways, that's cool. That's a fun fact that I had no idea um about you. So I guess with like you figuring all that stuff and the content that you, because I've looked at your YouTube and just like followed you through the newsfeed, and you've got some really great like value points, that's outside of the technical realm. But I guess this question kind of complements your work on YouTube and on other platforms. What's one way that your content or your work or your practice that changed someone's life yet you didn't expect? It could be a motorcycle too. It could be,
Yeah.
fixing someone's motorcycle too. It could be that. It could be outside of that.
I don't know if my motorcycle building abilities has changed anyone's life, but I certainly I've taken advantage of what modern technology has to offer, and certainly part of that is branding myself as the tattooed nerd, and we could talk about that a little bit later. But I started using social media as an outlet because I was purely selfish. It was really how it started. Is that I just started at Zoom from Microsoft, and I was doing this Microsoft Teams and Zoom video. It was this demo that I was doing, and I was doing it live for customers, and then AEs would say, "Hey, can you do this demo for me?" And I'm like, "Sure." And then after a while, I was doing this demo like 5 and 10 times a week, and honestly, I got tired of doing the damn demo. I didn't want to do the demo anymore. It was pretty monotonous and repetitive. And I'm like, how can I leverage technology to scale this to a way that I don't have to be at every single customer meeting? So my very first video I created this, what I said, a Microsoft Teams and Zoom coexistence video that showcased how Zoom worked inside of Microsoft Teams. And I created it. And then anytime an AE or a solutions engineer would ask me, "Hey, could you do this demo for the customer?" I would kind of push back and say, "No, I don't. I can't be at every single customer meeting worldwide to give this demo, but I created this resource for you so you can show this to the customer." And just from that one video alone, I figured out the power of a video as a communications level of enablement. And so now I've enabled every account engineer, every account executive, as well as every sales solutions engineer to be able to show this video to their customers. And then after that, should they have any questions or further deep dives, happy to help. But it was a way better use of my time and a way better use of the customers and the sales team's time in order to leverage this modality of video. And so that's kind of where I took this social engineering and social media platform into enabling and helping people in scale, right? Just not one person at a time in a meeting, but I now can do this with hundreds, if not thousands, of different people at the same time.
Yeah, no, I will say video is an asset today. Like and not just video, but production of it. I think there's a lot of opportunity with businesses in tech and out different industries to really utilize video to the best that they can, because video is it's digestible, right? You see things, right? It like clicks for you, and the more that you can be with your storytelling experience, right, with your skills, a lot of people need that, right? So they can understand it, so they can do it too. It's like monkey see, monkey do, kind of like that saying, right? Like once they see it, it's like, okay, if I can do it, then it, I think that is a great, and I think social media, obviously there's like, it's a blessing and a curse some days, but if you want to really utilize it for its strengths, it can do a lot of amazing things worldwide. I think with your videos, that was a smart decision because I mean, it seemed small at the time, right? You're like, I'm just going to do this and we'll see where it goes. But the fact that it evolved into something that people probably use all the time, I think that's the simplest thing could be a big benefit for someone. So, and especially housing it on YouTube, right? Because different file formats, sometimes people have different devices that don't, I'm not going to like, again, I'm drinking the apple Kool-Aid. So I have a high processing computer, right? So it's going to digest, it's going to process high memory files. But for those who don't have the resources to get a computer like that, it's nice to have it on YouTube where they can just stream it. So that's awesome that you were able to utilize that. So I do want to talk about your tattoo nerd business now. I think I saw something that you have a patent for it now, I think, or license. I'm not quite sure. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think it's registered. So I would love to talk more about that. And then, what, I guess, what was the catalyst for that?
The tattooed nerd is my moniker that I utilize for myself. And yes, I just recently trademarked that term legally with the U.S. government. So that is, I own the tattooed nerd term. Obviously, I'm a nerd. I'm in technology, and certainly, if you don't know, I have a bunch of tattoos all over my body. So it just seemed like a natural, organic way to kind of name myself. But the the impetus of it really started with that one video, because you're right. I did that one video, which organically led to somebody saying, "Hey, could you do a video on this function or this feature? Could you showcase all these things that we have maybe in a blog?" And as you said, hey, we all learn different ways. And if reading a blog is the way you learn, great, keep reading blogs. That's not typically the way I learn. I learn through a visual stimulus from that. Obviously, why YouTube and Instagram and TikTok are around, even as
Hmm.
you said, good or bad, it certainly could be a learning and enablement vehicle that you can utilize to make your work life strength. But the point is that I started I started doing these videos, and then I thought, well, now I have to come up with some sort of name or brand. And that's when I came up with the Tattooed Nerd. And that just organically evolved over the literally years of, hey, doing simple features of, hey, here's a new feature that came out this week, into doing more maybe roadmap and strategy, and then even life content, how to be more successful, how to present better. And so it's kind of evolved that way. And then I opened up, as a joke, I started selling like Tattooed Nerd T-shirts and tank tops, and I'm going to start a new hat line as well. So I've really branded myself that way, and I didn't obviously grow up thinking, hey, I'm going to be a YouTube influencer in the technology field. That was not my motivation. It just kind of happened. I kind of backed myself into it, and now I talked about one of my passions is carpentry and welding and building bikes. But another one of my passions is creating content, right? It's the whole production level of content creation, and having the best mic and the best audio and the best video and the lighting. I love reading about that, and I love learning about that, which of course makes me a better influencer, which makes me a better social media influencer, which makes me even better at my job. So all those passions kind of just grow and organically help me become a better person, a better employee.
Yeah, and like eh, I believe you should create and thrive, right? Create things, create beautiful things, create art. Coming from, I was in art school for a bit, and then became a marketing communication major. I think the way that you can create and communicate in ways that one can reach more people and is easily digestible, I consider very I guess like a part of success in a sense, right? Because to success is progress, and the more progress that you make with refining your skill set and the way that you're creating things, I think is big. And again, I when I started my podcast, I was like, my budget was like $0. So I was like, I'm gonna start with my laptop and all this stuff. And
Yeah.
again, now I have a nice mic, and so I'm still learning, right? I think I love video production and like little snippets, and just it's a I guess it is a form of entertainment in a sense,
Of
right?
course.
It's
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
also but you also, if the content in it is quality, you are learning in a way that is actually quite applicable for out like I guess later in life. So for example, I took a class in economics. I didn't think that I really liked it because I was like, oh, this is gonna kind of be a little dry and boring, right? Like a stats class. But the teacher who had, or the professor that had taught it, was just so engaging and so just, and if you can take that and put it in a video format, I think
Yeah.
everyone would be in a, like a freakonomic, right? I think the more that I think if you're passionate about it and it conveys in any like medium, I think if you can inspire someone to get excited about something and apply it to something that they like, I think that's yeah, I think that's you. I don't want to say you made it, but I think that's just that's a big thing, right? Like if you can inspire people to and motivate them to do what they love to do by doing what you love to do, I think that is just best of both worlds. So I guess my question on top of that, I have a couple more um, before we wrap up. Eh, So I'm a bookworm. I like business books and obviously like nonfiction. I do like a little bit of fiction, a little bit, but I do a lot of nonfiction reading. Has there been a book or books that have most influenced your life? And then is there a book that you give out most as a gift?
Oh, those are two great questions. I am an avid book reader as well, and I typically like to go to a world that's not real. For example, I read a lot of like true crime, detective, spy novels, just because it helps me just leave this real world that I'm in right now and go to a world that's more fictional and fun to be in, and I can kind of forget maybe life troubles or life responsibilities for a time, and then go and read. And I read two different ways. Well, obviously, one I read through a Kindle or a hardback book is I typically do that like when I'm eating or when I have downtime, and then every time I'm in the car, I don't really listen to music. I'm not opposed to music. I just don't listen to music unless, and if I'm by myself, I'm listening to Audible. I'm listening to an Audible book. So I usually have two or three books going on at the same time. And so probably one of my favorite authors is Jeffrey Archer, who's this English author who wrote this series. And the very first book in the series is called Cain and Abel. And it's these two brothers that grow up in separate worlds, but literally you learn what it takes to build an empire and be successful. And it's a series now, but Cain and Abel is one of my favorite books. And I literally learned from that book what it takes to be successful, what the kind of motivation and drive you have to be successful. Though, so that's certainly one of my favorite books. And the book that I give out most often this is a selfish answer, by the way, is that I got hired last year by a publishing company to write a book, and I'd never written a book before, nor did I have any motivation to write a book. But Pact Publishing, which is a technical publishing company, came and says, "Hey, what we did a lot of research, and there's not a lot of books, hardly any books on Zoom." And so, since I work for Zoom and I had a social media presence, they said, "Would you like to write a book on Zoom?" And I was obviously kind of flattered in the beginning with knowing full well ignorance is bliss, because I had no idea how much work it takes to write a book. And so the next 6 months, I spent 6 months literally every night and every weekend spending time writing a book, because you can't write a 400-page book in a day. It takes literally months and months and months. And talk about a humbling experience, thinking you're an okay writer and then sending that first draft of that first chapter to an editor, and then you get it back. It could be the most humbling experience I've ever gone through. So this is, I guess, as a little self plug, I wrote this book called the Ultimate Zoom Cookbook. And I'm not sure I would ever write another book again, but now knowing that I am a published author is kind of cool. But knowing that I really am affecting lives, not only socially, but also with my book, as I really enable readers to learn about that Zoom platform more than just meetings. It's a lot more than that. And this book kind of dives deep into that. So that's the book I give away the most now.
That's cool. Yeah, I eventually one day would love to write a book. But again, it's on the back burner. It's like a future, right? Like
It's a lot
social
of work.
media thing. Yeah, I'm like, but I will say, yes, I wrote a 50-page paper on my worldview in high school, and that was very painful, very painful. It was my like basically senior thesis. And I mean, my worldview has modified since then, right? It's been like maybe a
Yeah.
few decades since then, but it is like when you submit it, it's like it is a freeing feeling. But then when you get the first edits, you're like, wow, okay, well, my ego bruise was really big this time. All right, let's let's look it over again. But yeah, no, that's really cool. I guess second to last question. Instead of a book, if you could have a billboard that reached billions of people worldwide, what would you put on it? It could be a phrase, it could be a paragraph. What would it be?
Oh, another good question. What would it be? As I said, I grew up on a farm and ranch in southeastern Colorado. I grew up with my grandfather as my primary father figure, and uh, he was a man that was not highly formally educated, right? He didn't graduate from high school. He did not go to college. He grew up as a farmer and a rancher, and that's all he wanted to do his entire life. But one of the smartest men I've ever met in my entire life. The problem is he always talked in riddles and enigmas and mysterious sayings that you always had to figure out. He never just straight up told you what to do or how to do it. But he did say this one thing to me that it's always kind of stuck with me, and I've used it to this day, is he said, success doesn't always mean you're doing it right, and failure doesn't always mean you're doing it wrong. And when I was 15 years old, I had no idea what that meant. I just thought, hey, you win, you're successful, and that's you keep doing that. But as I've learned in life, you learn a lot more from your failures than your successes, and to be driven to keep pounding through those failures is really what that taught me. So if I had a billboard, I'd let it say that.
Another goosebump answer that I got. Yeah, I believe in that too. Success doesn't always mean failure. To me, it means progress. And um, right, I always say I had a professor in college in a communications class that he said, "Practice makes permanent, not perfect." And I was like,
It's true.
that's the most realistic
Mm.
phrase I've heard. But yes, it's because perfect, obviously, like it's always that's subjective. So that would be a head. Your phrase or saying on that billboard would make people turn and be like, huh, like think. If you can make someone think a little bit in the day, I think that that's important, right? Because we should always challenge ourselves to think differently, to think outside the box. And so, thank you for that. And then last question, if people want to learn more about you, have questions about your career, have questions about motorcycles, have questions about, about um, the farm life, like, where can they get in contact with you?
So I'm probably, like many people, on the two most popular social media platforms in the world today. Professionally, I'm on LinkedIn. If you just search for Patrick Kelley, you're going to find my profile on LinkedIn. I post a lot of content on there, if not every day, every other day. And a lot of times that's a short video or a long video. And longer videos, you can find me on YouTube at Patrick Kelley Tattoo Nerd is my handle there. So those are the two platforms that you can watch and learn and maybe laugh at me, both of those ways. But you can also contact me in those ways as well.
Or with you, right? Or with you during
With you,
during the
sure. We'll go
yeah, or
with that.
with you, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, if I can laugh at myself, someone's probably laughing with me in a sense. So, anyways, thank you so much, Patrick, for your time, and I'm looking forward to listeners gaining a lot of invaluable insights.
Thank you for inviting me.